You know what the perfect gig for rugby fans around the world was, Kempe, this weekend?
Oh, dear.
You know.
I do. I was sitting down. I would have loved to have been up in Fiji too, Daniel. Mate, the place would have been absolutely rocking.
Wonderful result as they beat England on, at one of the very most important cathedrals of international rugby, Twickenham. Yeah, huge result for the Flying Fijians. We are utterly thrilled, delighted to welcome into the program part of the coaching group, Mr. Daryl Gibson joins us, who I'm sure is probably still smiling after that performance. Daryl, thanks so much for dropping by and joining us here on SENZ. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thanks, boys. Good morning. No, it's a really special occasion on Saturday, and as you said, then the Fijian crowd who are at the game, while they certainly made themselves known, and I just think, wow, what a historic day for Fiji.
A historic day for the world, I think, Daryl, when you look at Fiji and jumping up the 7th ranks above the English team as well as knocking them off in that game. Mark Evans come out and said that your World Cup and the impact that Drua would have on the World Cups wouldn't happen until 2027. Mate, it feels like they're going to have an impact on this World Cup. You boys must be pretty happy with the way that they turned up and played against England.
Oh, absolutely. I think, probably the more remarkable thing for me is given the disparity in resources available to both countries. I think, England are a true powerhouse of world rugby. They've got resource, financial resource, economic. They've got everything at their disposal. And for us just to get to the start line, and get to the field, there's always challenges, and disadvantages that, tier one nations don't even need to think about. So, that in its own right is a real achievement. And then it shows what we can do, with Samoa doing incredibly well against Ireland, nearly tipping them up. If you give the Pacific nations, tier two nations, time together, you can actually, coach and improve. And I think, this is our 8th, going into our 9th week together. And just that time's been incredible to, get the boys in a position to compete. And I think, for us, Mark's right. The Drua has been fantastic. But we're also very lucky. We've got a very experienced sort of older cast that can steer those young boys around. So, yeah, it all collided in a fantastic occasion on Saturday, and gives us a great deal of confidence moving into the World Cup and the games for real.
Yeah, really interesting to hear you talk about time together, how important that is to you. And also, I assume, the level of opposition, to refer to a side you brought up Samoa. I think Samoa's game against Ireland was their first against a tier one nation since the last World Cup. That just seems ridiculous to me. So in the 8 weeks you've been together, knowing time is so important, what have you focused on as a coaching group? What's been essential to utilising that time?
Oh, absolutely. So, I've been with the team for 4 years. We get July and November, so you get 3 weeks. In July, 3 weeks in November. And so we've been hanging out for this moment where we get our boys for a long period of time to actually focus on getting them fit. That was the first priority, is how do we get our boys fit enough to be able to compete at tier one levels, because we never have that opportunity. So, we've been hammering them. This is the 8th week. They're starting to creep just because of the volume and amount of work we're putting into them. But that's starting to pay benefit. And probably the second thing we've really focused on, Fiji is the most penalised team in world rugby. We average 16 penalties a game, 1.6 yellow cards. So discipline for us and fitness. We know if we can, get that trending in the right way, then we're going to be competing with those tier one countries. And as you pointed out, it doesn't come along very often. The opportunity to play a tier one team. So you seldom get to measure yourself, but obviously we're focused on our next few weeks as well. We've got obviously Wales and Australia, our first 2 games in the Cup, so it's going to come around pretty quick.
They talk about, Daryl, that I guess that makeup of a Fijian player, if you can actually get them fit, then their talent and their skills tends to to be far superior than anyone else. The Drua in the competition this year and that week in, week out professional game, how much has that played leading into the World Cup?
Oh, it's huge. Obviously, the Drua second year professionals now, and I think again it just highlights if you give the boys the right environment where they can train and be as professional as they can. What you can do, and the improvement they can make in that 2-year period has really closed the gap. Previously we'd get our boys from Europe who are all in professional clubs, and they would be at a much higher level than our boys from the island. So, that's changed now. The Drua boys approach the game professionally. They're trained professionally. They know what it's about. So, that goes to making us a much stronger squad. And given the time that we have now with them, can actually set about improving, every day.
Daryl Gibson out of the Fijian rugby team is with us here on SENZ. I just want to talk about the anatomy of the game against England, if you don't mind. I'm sure you don't mind. You beat England. You're probably happy to talk about it ad nauseum. But 8-3 at the half. You're actually trailing at the half, and then you put 27 points on them in the second half. What clicked, or did you sense something was coming at the break? Did you feel as if, hey, we're just a little bit of execution here and there, and a history-making afternoon is available to us?
Yeah, there's a couple of big moments in that first half. Obviously, we had a disallowed try through a forward pass, and that would have had us in the lead. And then just before half-time, we had to withstand a couple of line-out drives from our own 5-metre line. And I think that was incredibly telling because, we held England out in an area which, traditionally that's their bread and butter. So for us, that gave us a huge amount of confidence going into the shed. And then coming out of it, I think Kempe pointed it out, the Fijians are always capable of scoring those tries that no one else in the world can do. And then all of a sudden we scored 2 in pretty good succession. And then you can see the players just lift in confidence, and you could see that, actually, we're a chance here. And so, everything, the intensity levels, the concentration stayed high, which, again, leading into this game, our second half performances have been dropped off. And so it's really pleasing that we went the other way and came away with, quite an incredible win.
I'll tell you what, it's a really scary thing, Daryl, when you've got players who ability-wise are head and shoulders above the opposition, but confidence starts to come behind them and give them that actual belief that, man, if they can hang with them, they're going to actually destroy them. I actually saw a little bit of the 2002 Warriors in that Fijian side in the second half. In saying that, what is the rest of the Pacific when you're talking about Samoa and Tonga? And the way that they're playing in this World Cup also aided with Fiji in their progression.
Yeah, I guess, we've all got our different strategies. I know, we're certainly approaching it that we want to play a style of game that is uniquely Fijian. We want to retain that identity and not turn the boys into a clone of a Tier 1 nation. So we're really careful around making sure that all those things are retained and encouraged. One of our, I know it sounds funny, but one of our things that we say to the boys all the time is just play like a Fijian. Go out there and have fun, keep a smile on your face. Yeah. And we'll see where that gets us. And if you look at, say, Samoa and Tonga, they approach the game in a very similar way. Their DNA is generally thicker, physical, big contacts, big collisions. And you can see that the game at the moment is being dominated by big teams, big collisions. And the team that win that at the moment is dominating rugby. So, I think it's going to be a fascinating World Cup in terms of what style comes through and actually wins.
Jerry, you might have picked up on the point I was trying to raise earlier about, the fans of Fiji, the people of Fiji, how much active support do they get? But I'd love to know from the player's perspective, that connection between player and fan. Is it a real sense of we are playing for our people every game?
Oh, absolutely. I think probably the best thing we did in our first 8 weeks is week 1, we went out to Taveuni, which is sort of an outer island of Fiji, 3 hours from the mainland, and we lived like Fijians. The boys stayed in a hut for a week. We had limited access to a ground, but it really got the team back in touch with what it is to be Fijian and the people who they represent, and it brought our team together because we were made up of the Drua and our boys from Europe. So all of a sudden, coming out of that 1 week together, we were a team and knew very clearly who we were representing and who we were playing for. And I think that's just continued to build and grow. And I think what you're seeing now is a whole nation swinging behind the team, and that's really powerful.
Well, you're going into the World Cup. You got Wales, Australia, Georgia, Portugal in your pool, and
lick your chops.
We had a chat yesterday
lick your chops.
About the likelihoods of Fiji and Australia possibly, up against those other teams. You must be quietly confident given that win against England, Daryl. But how do you keep them grounded? Like I know it's always good to get the win, but how do you bring them down and now get them prepared and keep them grounded to go out and do the same week in, week out in the World Cup?
Yeah, it's obviously the big thing. I think for us, the weekend was taking our first, a big step it was, but a first step against the Tier 1 nation to give us that belief and confidence that we can actually play against the big teams and compete, and then obviously get the win. So that's been the first thing. But then also, the great thing I love about Fijians is win, lose or draw, they still end the game with a smile on their face. They don't get too high with winning and they don't get too low with losing. And that's what, as much as we were happy about the win on Saturday, the boys, they're just another day. And so I think they're really, really excited about the opportunity that's ahead of them. That's the feeling in the team that, wow, we're actually can play and we're going to compete. So I think that excitement is just going to grow as the closer we get to Wales and obviously Australia.
Yeah, brilliant stuff, Daryl. Overall, your feelings on the tournament as a whole, more broadly speaking, what are you expecting? Is it going to be a whistle-happy tournament? Is it going to be open? Is it going to be set-piece orientated? Is discipline the most important word for all teams at this tournament? Broad brushstrokes, what are you expecting as far as the event itself?
I think you hit it on the head with discipline. Unfortunately, I feel that the cup's going to be decided by the team that doesn't get yellow cards, can limit the amount of penalties that they give away to not give away field position. And I think, unfortunately, officiating is going to be a major topic. I know out of the All Black game, we were at the game on Friday night, and while we were, seated there, we were oblivious to what was happening around the TMO and the interjection. So I just wonder how much that's going to play a part. And then I think it's going to be a contrast of styles because you're going to have kick dominant teams like Wales, England, France to a certain degree, playing against teams that actually want to use the ball and be an attacking mindset. So, as I said to you earlier in the program, I think it's going to be fascinating to see what style wins through. And as an advertisement for our game, I think it's going to be incredibly exciting, particularly the Pool A, Pool B. But now, obviously Pool C and D, the other half of the draw, it looks far more competitive for those knockout stages.
Oh man, how exciting! You got Pool C and Pool D. If I was coaching in them groups, I would be just rubbing my hands together, going, "We've got a definite chance getting through to the major games of this." And if they had a try of the tournament, I'd be putting all my money on Fiji because they'd be short favourites. You talk about resources and the disparity, Daryl. This is a real bugbear of mine with the Pacific nations. What needs to change to make sure, how do we get rid of tiers, for instance, and make this more of an even playing field when you go into World Cups? Because in 2027, when Fiji goes there again, we don't want to have to worry about Fiji and having to scrounge the coins together to get there when you've got the likes of Australia, the All Blacks, and England just willy-nilly spending their money. How do we change that?
Yeah, I think in World Cup year it all changes because we actually do get the time and the resource to be able to compete. It's what happens between World Cups. The 2 or 3 years in between where you're throwing breadcrumbs in terms of games. You get July, you get November. You may get a tier 1 nation in that schedule. But the thing that we need the most is obviously really excellent governance around how the game's administered, and then also time. Time to actually be together. And I think when you look at the All Blacks, typically are together for 7 months of the year through their championship period and then their overseas tours. That adds up. That's 7 months of development and time they're putting into their players. Whereas we rely on our club system to do that development and just bring the boys together for those periods. So I think these moves towards the Nations Cup and things that are really going to help I hate to say it, but tier 2, those nations that are limited for time, and that's only and giving them really meaningful competitions to play in. I think so. There's a few things there, and I hope the administrators see what is possible with, say, Fiji, Samoa and Tonga competing to a really high level in this World Cup.
Well, I hope you get your wish on that, Daryl. I'm a little bit more cynical. They should have done something in 1987 after the excitement Fiji brought to the tournament at the inaugural World Cup. Korondurundua, one-handed, incredible moments. Western Samoa in 1991. Hopefully we do get to that place. But Daryl, thanks so much for giving up so much of your time. Keep, huge congratulations to you and your team. Tell them to keep playing with a smile on their face because they certainly put a smile on our face watching them over the weekend. Thanks so much.
No, brilliant. Thanks, boys.
Go get 'em, mate.
SENZ. It's Kiwi for sport.